Hey there! Today I want to show you this nice fortune wheel in Flutter. I used a lot of different libraries for fortune wheels, but they weren't very nice. I wasn't very happy with them because it always stopped like in the middle and some other stuff that wasn't very nice. So that's why I came up with my own self-made fortune wheel in Flutter. And today I want to show you how to build this simple demo app so that you can implement fortune wheels in your own app. As you can see, I have a button here to spin the wheel. When I click it, the wheel starts to spin and then it will just stop at some random point. And then I will get a message what thing I have won here. So now I would say, let's go. I will show you how to build this. At first, we have to create a Flutter project, and we do that with Flutter create, and then we give the project a name. And I will just call it Fortune Wheel Demo. So now you can see our new project. And now we have to do at first some things. At first, I would say we can just clean up a little bit the main.dart file. And now I would say I can just run our new app on the simulator. And we will see how it looks. And as you can see, you see nothing because we just deleted all the stuff in the scaffold here. So now let's create a new app, our demo app. And at first we have to define our segments. As you can see, each segment has a different text. So we at first have to define which segments our fortune wheel should show. So that's why we create here a new file and we name it segments. And here we have to create a list of segments, of fortune wheel segments. But at first we have to define what is a fortune wheel segment for us. And that's why we create a new file and we name it fortune wheel segment.dart. And here now we can define a new class, fortune wheel segment. To keep it simple, I would say we just give it a text, and this is the text that we can see here. So we just call it final string text. And we also need obviously the constructor. And we give the constructor our text. And now we can go to our segments.dart file and we can create a list of segments here. So we say final list, a list of fortune wheel segments, and we call it segments. Push this here. Then we have to import our fortune wheel segment class. We can put a semicolon there, and now we can define some segments. So we use our constructor, fortune wheel segment, and we define our text just with, I would say I will do it like in my demo. So $10. The dollar is a special character, so we have to use this slash here. Then we define another one, another one, another one, another one. By the way, I'm using GitHub Copilot here, so that's why it gives me some suggestions and I can just import them there. So fortune wheel segment, and we need a big one. So we just give it $1,000. This is like our main price. So now we created the segments, we created this list, and now from this list we have to create our fortune wheel. And therefore we create a new file and we name it fortunewheel.dart. Here we create a stateful widget and it is named fortune wheel. And actually this class doesn't contain very much at the moment because at the moment we will just create a fortune wheel here in our build function. But later on we will also manage all the animation and so on here, and also we will get the winning segment and so on. But for now, let's just create a new widget. We will use a layout builder because we have to give our fortune wheel a size. So we use the layout builder with context and constraints. And here we just use a center widget. and we give it a child, and here we use a custom paint. And I don't know if you have worked with custom paints. I will show you a little bit how it works for now, but we will keep it very basic. And in a custom paint, we at first need a size. This needs a size object. And here we have to give it a width and a height. And for our width, we use constraint.maxWidth minus constraint max width divided by 8. And we use the same one for the height. So it will be a square. So, and then we need a painter. And now at first, because here you can see it needs a painter, a custom painter. And this we have to define at first. We have to create a new class, and we do that as always in a new file. We will create a new file which is named fortunewheelpainter.dart. At first we create a class fortunewheelpainter, and this extends custom painter. And as you can see now there's an error because a custom painter needs different functions, the paint function and the should repaint function. So now we can just create the two missing overrides, and now we have these two functions here. For the should repaint, we can just return true. And now in our paint function, this is where the magic happens. So at first now we'll just jump to our new app because now I want to show here the Fortune Wheel Painter. That's why we will add it here in Painter, Fortune Wheel Painter. And now everything we do here will just show up here. And now at first we have to define some things that our painter has to know, because obviously it has to know which segments do we have, which segments does the fortune wheel contain, and also in which angle is the fortune wheel at the moment. So we could just use the segments that we created in the other file, but I would say let's not do it like that. Let's create a constructor for our new class, and let's put the segments into a local variable. So that way we can use this painter for several fortune wheels. So if you use in your app several different fortune wheels, you can just use the same fortune wheel painter for all of them. So you can just give it the different segments, and it will just create automatically the fortune wheel for you. So now let's create the two variables that we need. At first we need a list fortune wheel segment, and it's also called segments. Then we also need a double angle. This should be final, obviously. And now we have to define the constructor. I will just make it a little bit bigger so you can maybe read it better. Then we have to come to the important part. We have to create or fill the paint method. And this is where the magic happens. This is where we really paint our fortune wheel and where we give it all the details. So at first we have to define how we want to paint things. And therefore we create some variables. At first we create the paint variable for the background of our fortune wheel. This is just a paint object, and we give this paint object a style, and this is paint style fill. So that means that all the fortune wheel is filled with some color that we define later. Then we will create a circle paint. So we want to give our fortune wheel like a border. And we will give it a stroke width of 20, so it will be quite thick. Then we also need a line paint. This is for our different segments. And here we need a stroke width of 1. And last but not least, we also need a center paint, because the center will be a dot. So it will be filled. And now we give it also the color black. Now we have to define the radius of our fortune wheel. And for this, we just use the size that we get here. And the radius should be half of it. So the fortune wheel will just take all the space that it has. Then we have to define our center, and this is an offset, so that the painter knows where is the center of our fortune wheel, where should it be. And this should be obviously the half of the width of our size and the half of the height of our size. And then we also need a segment angle, because the fortune wheel painter has to know which angle each segment should have. And as we know, we have a full angle. Like we know the fortune wheel has 360 degree because it's a full circle. And we know the number of segments we have in our fortune wheel. From that we can get the segment angle. And for that we will use pi, which is a variable that is defined in Dart math. And we will, as I said, divide it by the segments.length. And now I would say we can draw our circle. We can create the first part of our fortune wheel. So we use our canvas. We get it from here. Canvas.draw circle. Here we have to define our center. We need our radius and we need our paint, which is this one. And now it will still not paint anything because here's an error, because we have called our fortune wheel painter, but the constructor now has some things. I have to give it the segments from our list that we have here, and we also have to give it an angle, and for now we will just give it the angle 0. It will still not show anything because we also have to show the fortune wheel screen here in our scaffold. So we define our body and here we call our fortune wheel. Yeah, as you can see, for now it's just a black circle. That's definitely not correct because we have to put here our circle paint. Now it looks a little bit better. I also wrote it wrong. So yeah, now we can go on with this one. And now we have to create the different segments. And we do it like that. We have, as I told you, we have a list of segments. And now we have to go through each of the segments and create them one by one. So we will create one, then we rotate it a little bit, then we create the other one, we rotate a little bit, we create the other one, and so on. And then we also have to insert the texts, obviously. So at first we need a for loop. And we start at 0 and we go until segments.length. And now at first we can define our start angle. This is like the start angle of our segment. For each segment, we have a start angle and an end angle, obviously. And these angles define what exactly is the winning segment at the end. So if we spin the wheel and we get into, I don't know, 90 degrees, and one segment is from 80 to 100 degrees, that means that this segment won the wheel spin. Now let's define this start angle. And here we use our variable that we defined in our for loop. We use the I, we multiply it by the segment angle. This is what we already defined here. And we add an angle. This is our start angle, which is at the moment just 0. And we subtract here pi divided by 2. And so we define our start angle. Now we can give our paint a color because we don't want it to be black or something. We want it to be white. So we put paint.color is colors.white. And now let's just draw the segments, I would say. And we do that with canvas.drawArc. And here we have to give it different things. At first we have to give it a rectangle, a rect. And we can use here the rect class from circle. And our circle has a center and a radius. We already defined them, so we can just use these variables. Now we have the start angle and the sweep angle. The sweep angle is just this segment angle. And we have use center. This is a Boolean. We need a Boolean here. And we want to use center, so we just put true here. And now we can just save this and you can see, okay, the border did get a little bit thinner. And now we painted all these arcs, but there is no line between the arcs. So we have to draw the lines at first. And we do that by using canvas.drawLine. And here we need different things. We need an offset P1, we need an offset P2, and we need a paint object. And the offsets are quite simple. We need the center point and we need the point on the border where the line has to go. But for that, we can just use our angle, our segment angle, our start angle that we just created. So at first, let's create a new variable, line angle. And here we just use the start angle and add our segment angle. From this line angle, we now can define the different offsets that we need. Or well, we just need one offset because the other offset is our center. So we can, from this line angle, calculate the offset that we need for our line on the border. And we do that by creating a new variable, final offset P1. This is an offset and needs the offset constructor. And here we now have to put dx and dy. For dx, we can just use center.dx and we add the radius of the circle and multiply the radius by cosinus and we give it the line angle. Then we do the same thing for the y part and here we just use the sinus. So now we have everything that we need. We can just put center here, we can put P1 here and we use the line paint here. The line paint is what we defined here. So now let's do it again and you can see now we have these lines. That looks quite nice, but there's no center. That looks a little bit shitty, I would say. So let's just create this center circle and we use the canvas.drawCircle for that. And here we need our center offset. We need a radius and here we'll just say we use our maximum radius divided by 8. And here we obviously need the center paint. And now we have this circle here. Then we also need the small triangle here that shows us which segment won actually. So let's create this one. At first we have to define how should it look, our triangle. Or well, let's say we have to define the size of our triangle. And I would say we just give it a size of 20. And then we have to see how we will actually draw this triangle. We will do it by using the method draw path of our canvas. So canvas.draw path. And we can now see what we actually need for that. We need a path and a paint. Let's define a path at first. So we just name it triangle path. And now we can put this one here. But if we just draw it now, you will see nothing because we actually have to edit this triangle path a little bit. At first, we will move it up here. We want to show our triangle here in this, in the center, top center. So triangle path dot move to. Now we have to give it an X and a Y coordinate. So we can just use center.dx for our X coordinate. And for the Y, we just use center.dy minus the radius. And let's just see how it looks then. But at first, obviously, we have to draw something actually there. So we use triangle path line 2. Here we also have to give it some coordinates. I just copied them there. So we just need the center dx minus our triangle size divided by 2. And dy minus radius and add 10 and divide and subtract the triangle size. Then we have to do the same stuff again because we need several lines obviously. So we do the same stuff again. This time we use here a plus, not a minus. So now we can close this path. Triangle path dot close. With this we end our drawing of our triangle, and you can see, okay, now we can see a little triangle there. Still not that nice, but it's something. Now we can give it a new color. We do paint color is colors.black. Now it will be black. Well, you can't see it anymore. Yeah, it's a little bit small. So that's why I would say let's add here some offset of 30, and now it looks very nice. It shows perfectly what the winning segment is.